The hot Taiwan sun beat down on Lucy's face as she stood outside a fancy hotel in Taipei. She was just a normal American student, with long blonde hair and a nervous look in her eyes. Her boyfriend Richard was acting weird, holding her hand too tight and sweating way too much. "I can't do this," Lucy said, pulling away from him. "This doesn't feel right." Richard grabbed her wrist, harder this time. "Baby, please. It's just a briefcase. All you have to do is walk in and deliver it. 5 minutes, tops." Lucy looked at the shiny silver briefcase handcuffed to Richard's wrist. She'd been dating him for a few weeks. He was fun, charming, and seemed normal enough. Until today. Now he was scaring her with his demands and the wild look in his eyes. "What's in it?" she asked, even though she already knew it had to be something illegal. "Don't worry about that," Richard said quickly. "Look, these are important business people. All you have to do is walk in, go to the front desk, and ask for Mr. Jiang. They'll handle the rest." Lucy's stomach felt like it was full of rocks. "Why can't you do it yourself?" Richard's face changed, getting darker. "Because they're watching me. But nobody knows you. Please, Lucy. I'm in trouble. Big trouble. If I don't do this." He let the sentence hang in the air. Lucy looked at the hotel again. It was the kind of place rich people stayed, with doormen in fancy uniforms and marble floors that sparkled. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe Richard was telling the truth about it being simple business. She was so wrong. The moment Lucy walked into the hotel lobby, she knew something was off. Men in black suits appeared from nowhere, surrounding her. They didn't look like businessmen. They looked like predators. Her hands started shaking as she asked for Mr. Jiang at the front desk. Before the clerk could answer, one of the suit men stepped forward. "Come with us," he said in broken English. His smile didn't reach his eyes. They led her to an elevator, 4 men boxing her in. Lucy's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The elevator climbed higher and higher, past the regular hotel floors, all the way to the penthouse suites. The doors opened to a hallway with red carpet and gold wallpaper. At the end was a large wooden door with intricate carvings. One of the men knocked, and Lucy heard a voice inside say something in Korean. The room they pushed her into was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows showing the whole city below. In the center sat a man behind a huge desk, Mr. Jiang. He was older, with gray hair and an expensive suit, but his eyes were cold and empty like a shark's. More men filled the room, all carrying guns they didn't try to hide. Lucy's legs felt weak. This wasn't a business meeting. This was something much, much worse. Mr. Jiang spoke in Korean, and one of his men translated. "Where is Richard?" Lucy's voice came out as a whisper. He's downstairs. He sent me to deliver this." She lifted the briefcase with trembling hands. Mr. Jiang's face didn't change as he pressed a button on his desk. Moments later, the door opened and 2 men dragged Richard in. He was bleeding from his nose, and his eyes were wide with terror. "Lucy, I'm so sorry," Richard cried out. "They made me do it. They said they'd kill my family." Mr. Jiang stood up slowly, walking around his desk. He moved like a cat stalking its prey. When he reached Lucy, he took her chin in his hand, forcing her to look at him. His touch was gentle, but it made her skin crawl. He spoke again, the translator echoing his words. "Congratulations. You have been chosen for a very special opportunity." Lucy tried to pull away, but Mr. Jiang's grip tightened. She watched in horror as one of his men opened the briefcase. Inside wasn't money or documents. It was filled with small blue packets that looked like drugs. "Please," Lucy begged, tears running down her face. "I don't want any part of this. Just let me go. I won't tell anyone." Mr. Jiang smiled for the first time, and it was terrible to see. He spoke one last time, and though the translator repeated his words, Lucy barely heard them. She was too focused on the needle one of the men was preparing. "Welcome to your new life, Lucy." The last thing she saw before the drugs knocked her out was Richard being dragged away, screaming. She didn't know it then, but this was the moment her old life ended. The normal American student was gone forever, and something new was about to be born from her fear and pain. The transformation was about to begin. Lucy woke up in a dirty room with peeling wallpaper. Her head felt heavy, and her stomach hurt badly. She tried to move but found her hands tied to a rusty metal chair. The room smelled like cigarettes and something worse. Fear. 3 other people were tied to chairs nearby. A tall German man, a big Mexican guy, and a skinny Chinese woman. All of them looked as scared as Lucy felt. None of them spoke. They didn't have to. Their eyes told the whole story. A doctor in a white coat came in, but he wasn't like any doctor Lucy had ever seen. His eyes were cold, and his hand shook slightly as he set up his medical equipment on a metal table. The tools he laid out looked more like torture devices than medical instruments. "Please," Lucy tried to speak, her throat dry. "What are you going to do to us?" The doctor didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out a blue packet, the same kind she'd seen in the briefcase. He held it up to the light, examining it like it was precious. "This," he finally said in broken English, "is CP84. Very special drug. Very expensive. Very dangerous." He smiled, showing yellow teeth. "You will help us transport it." Lucy's eyes widened as she understood. They were going to put the drugs inside them, make them into human smugglers. Drug mules. The doctor picked up a scalpel. "Don't worry. You won't die. Probably." One by one, he cut them open. The German man went first. His screams echoed off the walls as the doctor made a neat cut in his stomach and slipped one of the blue packets inside. The Mexican man was next, then the Chinese woman. Each time, the doctor worked quickly, stitching them up with rough black thread like he was fixing old clothes. Lucy was last. She fought against the ropes, but it was useless. The doctor approached with his bloody scalpel. "Stay still," he warned, "or I might cut something important." The pain was worse than anything Lucy had ever felt. The scalpel sliced through her skin like it was paper. She could feel the doctor's fingers inside her, making space for the package. Tears streamed down her face as he pushed the blue packet deep into her body. "Perfect," the doctor said as he stitched her up. "Now you are all ready for your trips." Mr. Zhang's men came in next. They untied the prisoners and gave them each a passport, plane ticket, and set of clothes. Lucy's hands trembled as she looked at her ticket. Paris, France. The others were going to different cities: Rome, Berlin, and Bangkok. "Listen carefully," one of the men said. His voice was like gravel. "When you arrive, our people will find you. They will take the package out. If you try to run." He pulled out a gun and pressed it against Lucy's forehead. "We will find you, and you will wish we had killed you here." They dressed Lucy in a nice business suit and fixed her hair and makeup. On the outside, she looked like any other young professional woman. But inside, she felt hollow, empty, like she wasn't even human anymore. Before they took her to the airport, Mr. Zhang himself came to see them one last time. He walked down the line of terrified drug mules, studying each one carefully. When he got to Lucy, he stopped. "Such a waste," he said in perfect English, surprising her. "Young, beautiful, American. You could have had a good life." He touched her cheek with one finger. "But now you belong to me." Lucy wanted to bite his finger off. She wanted to scream and fight. But the package inside her felt like it was burning, reminding her of what she had become. A container. A thing. At the airport, Mr. Zhang's men watched from a distance as Lucy checked in for her flight. Everything looked normal. She was just another passenger heading to Paris. Nobody could see the surgical wounds under her clothes. Nobody knew about the deadly package inside her. As she walked toward security, Lucy caught her reflection in a window. She barely recognized herself. The scared student from yesterday was gone. In her place was someone else, someone with dead eyes and a secret burning in her gut. The package inside her was more than just drugs. It was a bomb waiting to go off. A change waiting to happen. But Lucy didn't know that yet. All she knew was that she had to survive long enough to get to Paris. What she didn't know was that surviving would be the easy part. It was what came next that would change everything. Lucy sat in a dirty cell in Paris, her hands cuffed to a metal chair again. Her flight had landed 3 hours ago, and Mr. Zhang's men had grabbed her right outside the airport. But something had gone wrong. The men who were supposed to take the package out hadn't shown up yet. 4 guards watched her, playing cards at a table nearby. They spoke in Korean and kept looking at her like she was a piece of meat. One guard, younger than the others with a nasty scar on his face, wouldn't stop staring. Lucy's stomach hurt worse than before. The package inside her felt hot, like it was burning. She could feel her stitches pulling every time she moved. Something wasn't right. "I need a doctor," she said. None of the guards looked up. "Please, I think something's wrong." The young guard with the scar stood up, walking over to her. He grabbed her face roughly. "Shut up," he said in broken English. Then he kicked her hard in the stomach. The pain was explosive. Lucy screamed as she felt something tear inside her. The guard kicked her again, and the chair fell over. She hit the ground hard, still cuffed to the chair. "Stop," she begged. "The package, you'll break it." But it was too late. Lucy could feel it happening. The package had burst inside her. A burning sensation spread through her body like liquid fire. Her vision blurred, and strange colors danced in front of her eyes. The other guards finally noticed something was wrong. They rushed over, yelling at the young guard in Korean. Lucy barely heard them. Her whole body was shaking, and she could feel something changing inside her. The drug, CPH4, poured into her system. It wasn't like normal drugs. This was different. This was like her brain was waking up for the first time. Suddenly, Lucy could feel everything. She felt her heart beating, but not just the normal way. She could feel every cell in her heart moving. She could feel her blood flowing through her veins. She could even feel her brain changing, growing, expanding. The guards watched in horror as Lucy started convulsing. Her body rose off the ground, floating in the air even though she was still cuffed to the chair. The metal of the handcuffs groaned and bent like it was made of rubber. "What's happening?" one guard shouted. "Call Mr. Zhang." But Lucy wasn't listening anymore. She was too busy feeling her brain come alive. Knowledge started pouring in. She understood things she never knew before. She could see patterns in everything, in the dust floating in the air, in the scared breathing of the guards, in the very fabric of reality around her. The handcuffs snapped like they were made of paper. Lucy stood up slowly, her body moving in strange, smooth ways. The guards backed away, pulling out their guns. "Don't move," the young guard yelled, but his hands were shaking. Lucy looked at him, really looked at him. She could see his nerve endings firing, could read the electrical impulses in his brain. She knew exactly what he was going to do before he did it. When he fired his gun, Lucy moved faster than human eyes could follow. She caught the bullet between her fingers like it was a floating feather. The guards' mouths fell open in shock. Lucy looked at the bullet, turning it slowly in her hand. "Interesting," she said, but her voice sounded different now. Calmer, stronger. "I can feel my brain working," she told the terrified men. "I can use more than the normal 10%. It's opening up. Everything is opening up." The young guard tried to shoot again, but Lucy waved her hand and all their guns flew across the room. She could feel the metal singing to her, could control it with just a thought. "I need to go now," she said. The guards couldn't move, couldn't speak. They just stared as Lucy walked to the cell door. It opened by itself, the metal lock melting away. Before she left, Lucy turned back one last time. "Thank you," she said to the young guard who had kicked her. "You just gave me a gift. You made me special." She walked out into the hallway, leaving the guards frozen in fear behind her. With each step, she could feel herself getting stronger, smarter, more powerful. The drug wasn't killing her. It was changing her into something new, something that had never existed before. Lucy smiled as she walked out into the Paris sunshine. The change had begun, and there was no going back. She was becoming something more than human. Lucy walked into a busy Paris hospital, ignoring the stares from people who noticed her torn clothes and the blood on her shirt. She didn't care about them. Her mind was racing with new thoughts, new powers, new understanding. She found a young doctor and grabbed his arm. "I need you to tell me what's happening to me," she said. Her voice was steady even though her body felt like it was on fire. "I need to know about CPA4. The doctor tried to pull away, but Lucy's grip was like iron. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said in French. "Yes, you do," Lucy replied in perfect French, surprising herself. She hadn't known French 5 minutes ago. "It's a substance that pregnant women produce in their 6th week of pregnancy. It helps build a baby's bones. Tell me more." The doctor's eyes widened. He led her to an empty examination room and started checking her vital signs. His hand shook when he saw the readings. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Your brain activity. I've never seen anything like it." Lucy sat on the examination table, feeling her body change with each passing minute. She could see inside herself now, could watch her cells multiplying and changing. She could feel her brain growing stronger, making new connections. "Look at this," she said. She held up her hand, and suddenly her fingers started changing color like a chameleon. Then they turned transparent, showing the bones underneath. The doctor stumbled backward in shock. "How are you doing this?" he asked. "I can control every cell in my body now," Lucy explained. She walked to a computer in the corner of the room. When she touched it, numbers and images started flying across the screen. She wasn't even typing. The computer was responding to her thoughts. "My brain capacity is increasing," she said, reading the medical data flowing past. "Normal humans use 10% of their brains. Right now, I'm at 20% and growing." To prove her point, she raised her hand. All the medical equipment in the room started floating. The doctor pressed himself against the wall, his face white with fear. "Don't be afraid," Lucy said. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just need to understand what's happening to me." She closed her eyes, and suddenly she could see everything. Every person in the hospital, every cell phone signal, every radio wave passing through the air. She could read the thoughts flowing through the electrical signals in people's brains. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Everything is connected. Everything is energy." The doctor watched as Lucy's hair started moving by itself, floating like she was underwater. Her eyes had changed too. They looked deeper somehow, like they could see right through walls. "What are you becoming?" he asked. Lucy smiled, but it wasn't a normal smile. It was like she knew secrets about the universe that no one else could understand. "I don't know yet," she said, "but I need to find someone who can help me figure it out." She walked to the computer again. This time, when she touched it, she didn't just read the data. She became part of it. Her mind flowed through the internet, searching through millions of files in seconds. "Professor Samuel Norman," she said suddenly. "He's a scientist who studies the human brain. He'll know what to do." The doctor watched in amazement as Lucy's wounds healed themselves. The stitches from the drug package fell out as her skin became perfect again. Even her clothes seemed to clean themselves. "You should go now," she told the doctor. "What's about to happen? You don't want to be involved." As if to prove her point, alarms started ringing throughout the hospital. Mr. Zhang's men had found her. Lucy could sense them coming, could count their heartbeats as they ran up the stairs. "Thank you for your help," she said to the doctor. Then she walked straight through the wall like it was made of smoke, leaving him staring at the solid surface she had just passed through. Outside, Lucy looked up at the sky. She could see satellites orbiting the Earth, could feel the planet spinning beneath her feet. Everything was different now. She wasn't just Lucy anymore. She was becoming something else, something more. and she was only getting started. Lucy sat in a first-class airplane seat, flying to Rome. She didn't need a ticket. She had simply walked onto the plane, and everyone's minds told them she belonged there. Her brain capacity had reached 30% now, and she could control people's thoughts as easily as she breathed. While other passengers slept, Lucy's mind raced through the airplane's Wi-Fi, searching for information about Professor Samuel Norman. She found his latest research paper, The Unused Potential of the Human Brain. On her seat's screen, she watched videos of his lectures, absorbing every word. The human brain is like a computer working at minimum capacity, Norman said in one video. Imagine if we could access all of it. We would become gods. Lucy smiled. She wasn't imagining anymore. She was living it. Her phone rang. She had called her mother earlier, knowing it would be their last conversation. "Mom," she said softly, "I feel everything. The air moving in my lungs, the blood in my veins. I can remember every moment of my life, even being in your womb." Her mother's voice cracked with worry. "Lucy, you're scaring me. Are you on drugs?" "I'm beyond drugs now," Lucy replied. "I'm changing into something new. I remember the taste of your milk in my mouth when I was a baby. I remember every kiss, every tear, every moment we shared. I want you to know that I understand now. I understand everything." She hung up before her mother could answer. Looking out the window, Lucy could see the curve of the earth, the layers of atmosphere, the dancing patterns of weather systems. Her mind expanded further with each passing minute. Suddenly, she felt something. Other packets of CPH4 moving across the world. The other drug mules, carrying the same substance that had changed her. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, following their signals like bright stars in the night. One was in Rome, where she was heading. Another in Berlin. The third in Bangkok. She needed those packets. Her body craved more CPH4, not like a drug addict, but like a computer needing more power. The plane landed in Rome, and Lucy walked straight through customs without stopping. Nobody saw her unless she wanted them to. In the airport bathroom, she looked in the mirror. Her eyes had changed again. They seemed to hold galaxies now. She pulled out her phone and dialed Professor Norman's private number, which she had plucked from his university's secure database. "Professor Norman," she said when he answered. "My name is Lucy. I'm using more than 30% of my cerebral capacity, and it's increasing by the hour. I need your help." There was a long pause. "That's impossible," Norman said finally. "No human can." "I'm sending you data now," Lucy interrupted. She touched her phone, and instantly all her medical readings, brain scans, and cellular changes flowed through the connection. She could hear Norman gasping as he received them. "My God," he whispered. "This is revolutionary. This changes everything we know about human potential. Where are you?" "Rome. But first, I need to find the others like me. The ones carrying CPH4. I need more of it." "Lucy, wait," Norman said urgently. "This is dangerous. We need to study this carefully, in a controlled environment." But Lucy wasn't listening anymore. She had sensed one of the drug mules nearby, in a Rome hotel. She could feel the CPH4 calling to her. "I'll come to you soon, Professor," she said. "But first, I need to evolve further. Knowledge isn't enough anymore. I need to understand the fundamental rules of the universe." She walked out of the airport into the bright Italian sunshine. Every atom of air touched her skin like a kiss. She could see the DNA spirals in the grass growing between the sidewalk cracks. The world had become a symphony of particles and waves, and she was learning to conduct it. A black car pulled up. Mr. Zhang's men had found her again. Lucy didn't even turn to look at them. With a thought, she made their guns jam. With another, she stopped their hearts for just long enough to knock them unconscious. "I'm sorry," she said to their sleeping forms, "but I can't let anyone stop me now. I need to know what's at the end of all this. I need to know what happens when a human being reaches 100%. She stepped over their bodies and headed toward the city, following the siren song of the CPH-4. The next stage of her evolution was waiting. The streets of Rome turned into chaos as Lucy walked through them. Cars floated out of her way. Traffic lights changed at her will. She was heading to the hotel where one of the drug mules was staying, and nothing could stop her. Behind her, 20 of Mr. Zhang's men chased her in black SUVs. They shot at her, but the bullets stopped in midair and fell to the ground like rain. Lucy didn't even look back. Her brain was working at 40% now, and guns seemed like children's toys to her. Police cars joined the chase, their sirens wailing. Among them was Captain Pierre Del Rio, who had been tracking the drug mules for months. He watched in amazement as Lucy lifted an entire SUV full of gangsters and tossed it aside like it was made of paper. "Stop, police!" Del Rio shouted, pointing his gun at her. Lucy turned to look at him. Her eyes were different. They seemed to glow with an inner light. "You can't stop this," she said calmly. "But you can help me." Before Del Rio could answer, more of Zhang's men attacked. Lucy raised her hand, and suddenly all the gangsters froze in place. Their bodies hung in the air like puppets with cut strings. "Your gun has 17 bullets," Lucy told Del Rio. "The gangsters have a total of 247 bullets. In the next 30 seconds, they would have killed 8 innocent people in the crossfire. I can't let that happen." Del Rio lowered his gun slowly. "What are you?" "I'm evolution in action," Lucy replied. She walked up to him, and he felt something strange, like her mind was touching his. "You're a good man, Captain. You want to stop these criminals. Help me, and I'll help you end their operation forever." In the distance, they heard more sirens. Lucy looked up at the hotel building. The drug mule is on the 12th floor. He's scared. The CPH-4 package inside him is still intact. "I need it." "Why?" Del Rio asked. "What does this drug do?" "It's not just a drug," Lucy explained as they walked into the hotel. "It's the key to unlocking the human brain's full potential. Look." She touched a flower in the hotel lobby, and it grew a year's worth in 10 seconds, blooming and dying before their eyes. Then she touched a computer, and all the screens in the lobby lit up with complex mathematical equations. "I can control matter now," she said. "I can feel gravity. I can see radio waves. But I need more CPH-4 to reach higher levels, to understand everything." They took the elevator up. Lucy could sense the drug mule trying to escape through a window. She also felt Mr. Zhang himself entering the building with more men. "They're coming," she told Del Rio. "When I say run, you run. Don't try to fight them." The elevator opened to gunfire. Lucy stepped out first, moving faster than human eyes could follow. She disarmed 10 men in 3 seconds, their guns flying apart into pieces. Del Rio watched in shock as she fought like a superhuman, her movements perfect and deadly. More men came from the stairs. Lucy closed her eyes for a moment, and suddenly all the lights in the building went out. In the darkness, only her eyes glowed, like a cat's. "Run," she told Del Rio. He ran. What happened next was like something from a dream. Lucy controlled everything. The building's electricity, the water in the pipes, even the air itself. She moved through walls like they were mist, following the drug mule's fear like a beacon. She found him trying to climb down the fire escape. With a gentle thought, she pulled him back inside. The package was still good. She could feel it calling to her. "I'm sorry," she said to the terrified man. "But I need this more than you do." Mr. Zhang's voice came from behind her. "You have become a problem, Lucy." She turned to face him. He had a new gun, bigger, more powerful. But Lucy just smiled. She could see the fear behind his cold eyes. "No, Mr. Zhang," she said. "I've become the solution." The air crackled with energy as Lucy prepared to show them all just how far she had evolved. The next few minutes would change everything. For her, for them, and maybe for all of humanity. Lucy sat in Professor Norman's laboratory in Paris, hooked up to dozens of machines. Her brain capacity had reached 60% after taking the CP84 from the other drug mules. The world looked completely different to her now. She could see time itself flowing around her like a river. Incredible, Professor Norman said, watching his screens. Your brain is creating millions of new connections every second. No human has ever experienced anything like this. Lucy barely heard him. She was too busy watching the walls dissolve into streams of energy. Every atom in the room danced for her like tiny stars. She could feel the earth spinning, could sense the gravity pulling at her cells. I can travel through time now, she said quietly. The scientists in the room stopped what they were doing and stared at her. That's impossible, one of them said. Lucy smiled. Watch. She closed her eyes, and suddenly the lab changed around them. The walls became newer, then older. They watched as people from different times walked through the room. Students from last week, workers who built the building 50 years ago, all moving backward and forward through time. My God, Professor Norman whispered. You're not just seeing these things, you're actually moving through time. Time is like a road, Lucy explained. Most people can only walk forward on it, but I can go anywhere. Look. She reached out her hand, and suddenly they were all watching the birth of Paris. Buildings rose and fell like waves. People from hundreds of years ago walked through the room, not seeing them. More, Lucy said, her eyes glowing brighter. I want to see more. The scene changed again. Now they were watching the first humans walk across ancient lands. Then dinosaurs roamed through the lab space. Then they saw the first life forming in ancient seas. This is incredible, Professor Norman said. You're taking us through the entire history of Earth. But Lucy wasn't done. She pushed further back, showing them the formation of the planet itself. They watched stars being born and dying. Galaxies spun around them like beautiful wheels of light. Everything is connected, Lucy said, her voice changing, becoming something more than human. All the cells, all the atoms, all the time that ever was or will be. I can feel it all. The scientists checked their machines. Lucy's brain activity was still increasing. 65%, 70%, 75%. With each percentage, she seemed to become less solid, more like pure energy. I understand now, she said. Life didn't start on Earth. It started everywhere. Every planet, every star, every piece of matter in the universe is alive in its own way. We're all part of the same thing. Professor Norman tried to write everything down, but his hands were shaking too much. Lucy, what you're discovering, it changes everything we know about science, about life itself. Lucy stood up, pulling off all the wires and sensors. Her body seemed to glow from within. The universe is not just around us, she said. It's inside us, in every cell, every atom. The same forces that made the stars made us. She walked to a computer and touched it. Instead of just controlling it like before, her hand passed right through it. The machine lit up with new knowledge, downloading directly from her mind. I'm leaving you everything I learn, she told them. But there's so much more to understand. I need to go higher. I need to reach 100%. But what will happen then? Professor Norman asked. What will you become? Lucy looked at him with eyes that now held entire universes. I don't know, she said honestly, but I'm not afraid anymore. This is what humans were meant to become. This is the next step. She turned to look out the window, but she wasn't seeing just Paris anymore. She was seeing all of Earth, all of time, all of space. We never really die, she said softly. We just change forms. Energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. And I'm about to transform into something new. The scientists watched in awe as Lucy's body began to glow brighter. She was evolving before their eyes, becoming something that had never existed before, something that might change the fate of all humanity. And she was still growing stronger. The university laboratory turned into a war zone as Mr. Jiang and his men burst in, guns blazing. But Lucy was ready. Her brain had reached 85% capacity, and she moved through the chaos like a ghost made of light. "Get Professor Norman to safety," she shouted to Captain Del Rio. Her voice echoed strangely, as if it was coming from everywhere at once. Time slowed down around her as bullets flew through the air. Mr. Jiang had brought 50 men, all armed with the newest weapons. They surrounded the lab, shooting through windows and doors. But Lucy saw everything before it happened. She could read the electrical signals in their brains, knew their moves before they made them. "You can't stop evolution," she told them, her body glowing with blue energy. With a wave of her hand, she turned their bullets to dust. With another wave, she lifted 20 men off their feet and held them floating in the air. Professor Norman watched from behind a protective barrier as Lucy fought. She wasn't just defending herself. She was rewriting the rules of reality. When men shot at her, she changed the metal of their guns into water. When they tried to throw grenades, she turned them into flowers. "Fascinating," Norman muttered, taking notes even in the middle of the battle. "She's not just controlling matter. She's transforming it at the atomic level." Mr. Jiang pushed through his men, facing Lucy directly. He held up a black metal case. "You want this?" he asked. Inside was the last packet of CPH4, the most pure and powerful dose. Lucy's eyes flashed. "You don't understand what you have," she said. "That substance, it's not just a drug. It's the key to unlocking human potential. The same substance that helped build our brains when we were babies." "I don't care what it is," Jiang snarled. "I only care that people pay millions for it." He pulled out a special gun, loaded with bullets made to pierce any protection. But Lucy wasn't worried about bullets anymore. She had reached 90% of her brain capacity. Reality itself bent around her like paper in the wind. The walls of the lab became transparent, showing the energy flowing through everything. "Look," she said, touching the air. The space between her and Jiang filled with images. The beginning of life on Earth, the first humans, the long journey of evolution. We're all connected. All life comes from the same place. Even you, Mr. Jiang, are part of this great pattern." "Stop talking," Jiang screamed. He fired his special gun. Lucy didn't move. Instead, she reached out with her mind and caught time itself. Everyone in the room froze except her. She walked slowly through the frozen scene, looking at each face, each droplet of sweat, each bullet hanging in the air. "I'm sorry it has to end this way," she said softly. She took the CPH4 case from Jiang's frozen hands. "But nothing can stop what's coming next." She unfroze time, but kept control of every person in the room. With a gentle thought, she put all of Jiang's men to sleep. They fell to the ground like peaceful children, their weapons turning to sand. Only Jiang remained standing, held in place by Lucy's power. He watched in terror as she opened the case and took out the last CPH4 packet. "You wanted to control people with this," Lucy said. "But its real purpose is to set us free." She absorbed the CPH4 directly into her body, not needing to swallow it. The change was instant. Her body began to glow brighter than ever. Her feet lifted off the ground as energy coursed through her. The machines in the lab exploded with readings as her brain capacity shot up to 95%. "Lucy," Professor Norman called out. "What do you see?" She turned to him, her eyes now pure white light. "Everything," she whispered. "I see everything. All time, all space, all knowledge. And I'm not done yet." The walls of reality cracked around her like glass. Through the cracks, they could see other dimensions, other possibilities, other universes. Lucy floated in the center of it all, becoming less human and more energy with each passing second. The final transformation was about to begin. The laboratory hummed with energy as Lucy's transformation reached its peak. Her brain capacity pushed past 95%, racing toward 100%. Her human body was breaking down, turning into pure light and energy. Professor Norman, Captain Del Rio, and even Mr. Jiang watched in amazement as she began to change into something beyond human understanding. "It's beautiful," Lucy said, her voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I can see the truth of everything now. Time isn't a line. It's a circle. Space isn't empty. It's full of life. Everything is connected." Her body started to dissolve into streams of black particles, like living smoke. These particles spread through the room, touching everything, learning everything. Every computer in the lab lit up, downloading knowledge directly from Lucy's expanding consciousness. "What's happening to you?" Del Rio asked, reaching out to touch her hand before it disappeared into energy. "I'm becoming everything," Lucy replied. "And everything is becoming me. The boundaries between self and universe are breaking down. I understand now. This is what humans are meant to become. This is our future." The particles of her former body swirled faster, forming patterns that looked like galaxies and DNA strands at the same time. Professor Norman rushed from computer to computer, trying to record everything. "Your brain activity," he shouted. "It's at 97%, 98%, 99%. Lucy floated in the center of the room, her form constantly shifting between human and pure energy. "Time is the only true measure of human life," she said. "Not money, not power, not even knowledge. Just time and what we do with it." Suddenly, all the lights in Paris went out. Every computer, every phone, every electronic device connected to Lucy's consciousness. She was everywhere at once, in the power lines, in the radio waves, in the very air itself. "I can feel every person on Earth," she said. "Every thought, every dream, every fear. We're all the same, all part of the same great pattern, all searching for meaning." Mr. Jiang, who had watched his empire crumble, fell to his knees. "What are you?" he whispered. Lucy's voice came from all around him. "I am what you could have been, what all humans could become. The drug you sold for money was just a key to unlock our true potential." The black particles began to form something new, a sleek, black computer unlike anything they had ever seen. It grew from the floor like a tree made of living metal. "This computer contains all human knowledge," Lucy explained as her consciousness spread further. "Everything we know, everything we've learned, everything we've discovered. I'm leaving it for you, so others can follow the path I've taken." Professor Norman touched the computer with shaking hands. "But where are you going?" "Everywhere," Lucy answered. "And nowhere. I'm becoming part of the universe itself. Time, space, matter, energy. They're all the same thing. We just needed to evolve enough to see it." Her consciousness reached 100%. In that moment, something miraculous happened. Lucy's awareness expanded beyond Earth, beyond the solar system, beyond the galaxy. She could see the entire universe as one living thing, one great pattern of energy and life. She sent her final message to all of them. "Life was given to us 1 billion years ago. Now you know what to do with it. You have to share your knowledge. You have to pass it on. That's the meaning of life." The black particles swirled one last time, forming Lucy's face briefly before scattering into the universe. She had become pure consciousness, pure energy, pure being. She existed everywhere and everyone at once. Professor Norman would spend years studying the computer she left behind. Captain Del Rio would protect its secrets. Even Mr. Jiang, in prison, would come to understand what he had accidentally helped create. But Lucy herself was gone, or rather, she was everywhere. In the wind and the waves, in the stars and the stones, in every cell of every living thing. She had transcended human form to become part of the cosmic dance of creation itself. And somewhere in Paris, a young student looked up at the stars and felt something new, a connection to everything, a hint of what humanity could become. Because Lucy wasn't gone. She was just waiting for the rest of humanity to evolve and join her in the infinite dance of existence. The end was just the beginning.